This episode is sponsored by Incaptivate Films, the award-winning Edinburgh-based producers of the fantastic feature film Dark Sense. Hello and welcome to Film Pro Productivity, the podcast that helps film professionals and other creative people to live a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 41, The Law of Success in 16 Lessons, Part 2. Yes, here we are again, and before I go any further, if you've not heard the previous episode, which covers the introduction and the first 2 lessons in this series, then you should really go back and check it out now. And my aim with this 6-part series within the series is to give you a fleeting glimpse of the power that lies within the pages of Napoleon Hill's awesome book, The Law of Success in 16 Lessons, as I believe that this will help you open your mind to the concepts and theories presented within it. In order that you can delve deeper, however, I will also give you a link to a free Kindle download of the complete text as it's now in the public domain. And in the show notes of the last episode, I gave a similar link to a PDF version. These can be accessed via the show notes on the official website, filmproproductivity.com. So today I'll be tackling 3 more of Napoleon Hill's lessons, and I'll be quoting with such regularity that I won't always identify sections of his text purely for streamlining purposes. Suffice to say that much of the content is my interpretation or direct quotation of Napoleon Hill's words. The only regular change is making his words gender neutral every now and again, because I want to make what he says as accessible and relevant to today's audience as he intended it to be in 1928. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Lesson 3. Self-confidence. If you can believe that you are worthy of success, you can attain it. Without this simple understanding, you will probably get nowhere with most of your goals. If you're not confident, then you cannot sell yourself in life. As detailed in the mastermind principle, you will need the cooperation of others if you aim to attain success of a far-reaching nature, but you will never get that cooperation unless you vitalize your mind with the positive attitude of self-confidence. The development of self-confidence starts with the elimination of a demon called fear, which sits upon your shoulder and whispers into your ear, "You can't do it. You're afraid to try. You're afraid of public opinion. You're afraid that you will fail. You are afraid you have not the ability," unquote. Regular listeners will recognise this demon from my episode, The Inner Critic. But let's hear what Hill has to say about it. A good chunk of this chapter is dedicated to recognising what he calls the 6 basic fears. Fears which keep us from advancing to success. Hill says, the fear of poverty is a terrible thing, as the age in which we live seems to be the age of money worship. And I think that could still prove true today to many people. The fear of old age is connected to the fear of poverty. It grows out of distrust of our fellow man seizing whatever worldly goods we may possess. That seems a fairly realistic fear these days, as the British government anyway continues to go about extending the age of retirement here and removing services from us which we pay for, whilst charging us the same or greater taxes. But I digress. I did put out a quote yesterday on all of these social networks, my quote of the days, and it was by Benjamin Franklin, and he said, "All would live long, but none would be old," which I thought was pretty interesting and poignant. Made me think quite a lot on that one. The fear of criticism is third up, and it takes on many forms, Hill says, the majority of which are petty and trivial in nature, but he warns too that powerful and mighty is the fear of criticism. I think any of us working in the arts are well aware that we put our heart and soul into these creative endeavours and we put them out into the world, and especially in the age of the internet, the criticism can be violently upsetting, and I am very, very aware that certain creative people are not putting their content out at all or stopping themselves from making it in the first place, all because of a fear of criticism. Fear of ill health must be closely associated with the fear of poverty and old age, and Hill strongly suspects, and I can't disagree with him here nearly 100 years on, that those engaged in the business of selling good health products have had considerable to do with keeping the fear of ill health alive in the human mind. The fear of the loss of love of someone is fairly self-explanatory, but that is the fifth in his list of fears. And the author ends this list with the fear of death, with the caveat that, although it is the greatest fear, in truth no one knows, and no one has ever known, what heaven or hell is like, or if such a place exists. His aim in identifying these fears is that if we can intellectually examine their source in ourselves, that this will make the first step towards eliminating them possible. Now, as usual, Hill gives numerous examples of how fear stops people from achieving what they're trying to do. But the general point of what he's trying to say here in regard to fear is that fear inhibits ambition. And we're talking about self-confidence here. So if you have fears in these areas, they are limiting you. They are keeping you back. They are holding back your ambition. If you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. Vincent van Gogh, unquote. It's a well-established fact, Hill goes on to say, that the faculties of the mind, like the limbs of the body, wither away if not used, and self-confidence is no exception. It develops when used, but disappears if not. And he offers up a self-confidence formula which starts with the aggressive, continuous action you need to make towards your definite chief aim, your definite purpose in life, as I detailed in the last show, then dedicating 30 minutes a day to becoming the sort of person you intend to be. And I find this quite interesting because today the big message is be yourself. Just be yourself, everything's going to be all right. And that is a great way to go through life. But we're talking about success here. And I actually find this whole self-confidence thing, there's a whole lot of messages in this book I really am like, oh my God, I never even considered this stuff. And this is one of them, which is that you could spend time bettering yourself in certain ways, deliberately, consciously thinking about it, so that you increase your chances of being more successful. And in his formula for success, he suggests that you devote 10 minutes of the 30 minutes that I mentioned a minute ago daily to demanding of yourself the development of the factors specifically named in these 16 lessons. He also says to have a clearly mapped out and written down description of your definite purpose in life. That's what we talked about in the last episode. Effectively what we now call, I suppose, a 5-year plan. He was talking about in terms of a 3-year plan. And finally, as part of this formula, he evokes the law of attraction by stating to ourselves that we will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. That's the law of attraction. Engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. You will succeed by attracting the forces you wish to use and the cooperation of other people. The law of attraction states that whatever you focus on, think about, read about, and talk about intensely, you're going to attract more of into your life. In Hill's 1954 film, he describes a conversation which he once had with Andrew Carnegie, and I think it's worth recounting here as it's kind of relevant. So bear with me while I repeat it. Carnegie said, "Everyone comes to this earth blessed with the privilege of controlling his mind power and directing it to whatever ends he may choose. At birth," he said, "we arrive with the equivalent of 2 sealed envelopes." Bear with me on this. I skipped over this a couple of times. and finally came back to it. I've done a lot of work on this one. Bear with me, because it is interesting. I think there is something to be learned here. So he said, at birth, we arrive with the equivalent of 2 sealed envelopes. One is clearly labelled, the riches you may enjoy if you take possession of your own mind and direct it to ends of your own choice. And the other is labelled, the penalties you must pay if you neglect to take possession of your mind and direct it. In the one labelled riches is this list of blessings. 1. Sound health. 2. Peace of mind. 3. A labour of love of your own choice. 4. Freedom from fear and worry. 5. A positive mental attitude. And 6. Material riches of your own choice and quantity. And in the sealed envelope labelled penalties, Carnegie continued, is this list of the prices one must pay for neglecting to take possession of your own mind. 1. Ill health. 2. Fear and worry. 3. Indecision and doubt. 4. Frustration and discouragement throughout life. 5. Poverty and want. 6. And a whole flock of evils consisting of greed, jealousy, anger, hatred, and superstition. My mission in life, Hill tells us, is to help you to open up and use the contents of the sealed envelope labelled riches. These lessons are the starting point in opening up those riches. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Lesson 4. The habit of saving. It should be obvious to all that the saving of money is one of the essentials for success, but the big question in the minds of those who do not save is, how can I do it? Hill goes into this, though, and explains that the saving of money is solely a matter of habit. Formation of the habit of saving not only conserves that which you earn in a systematic manner, but it also places you in the way of greater opportunity and gives you the vision, the self-confidence, the imagination, the enthusiasm, the initiative, and the leadership to actually increase your earning capacity. Now, I went into habits again just a few weeks ago, and it was for very good reason. Habit forming is an extremely powerful skill to master. And Hill's angle on this is that through repetition, any act indulged in a few times becomes a habit. And today, that few times is regarded generally as about 30 days or so. From my own point of view, having done a few episodes on habit and day by day really working on building habits myself, there's a simple thing that happens with habit. You've got a very limited supply of willpower every day. Some call it mental energy. I've done an episode about that. And habit replaces your need to have the willpower to do things. If you're just doing things out of habit, you're not having to put the energy, this finite amount of mental energy you've got every day, willpower, you're not having to use that up on certain actions. So habit allows you to put your willpower, your focus onto other new things, and it just means that that can extend a bit further. I'm not sure if this makes any sense at all, but as the habit forms, that habit replaces the need for you to commit willpower towards whatever it is you're working on. And if I've explained that correctly, which I have my doubts about, but if I've explained that correctly, that is the power of habit. And in this chapter, Hill brings us back to the definite chief aim lesson, where you set up in your mind an accurate, definite description of that which you want, including the amount of money you intend to earn and or to save. This is, again, something many creatives avoid, as some of us seem to have an inbuilt revulsion to making money from our work, or we have some sort of imposter syndrome incursion about charging too much. That said, I do know a few people that don't have that problem at all. But if that sounds like you need to get over it, around it, or go through that self-applied limitation and do what Hill is suggesting here. Let's get past your distaste and set a target figure to aim for. And as with all our goals, if we don't know where we're going, how can we navigate towards it? So set up a target figure to aim for, either for savings or an earning figure or both. And this chapter, remember, is about saving money. That's the point of this whole chapter. Let's not forget that. What Hill is setting up here is a route to killing the fear of poverty that he mentioned in the previous lesson. Hill's point is this: by urging on and demanding of yourself increased earning power on the one hand, and by systematically laying aside a definite amount of all your earnings on the other, you will soon reach the point at which you have removed all imaginary limitations from your own mind, and you will be well stated on the road towards financial independence. Hill dedicates a subchapter here to what he calls the slavery of debt. Debt, he points out, and don't we know it, is a merciless master, the fatal enemy of the savings habit. Poverty alone is sufficient to kill off ambition, destroy self-confidence, and destroy hope, but add to it the burden of debt, and all who are victims of these two cruel taskmasters are practically doomed to failure. And if you've ever had any doubt that this near 100-year-old book is as wise today as it was back then consider again that sentence. Poverty alone is sufficient to kill off ambition, destroy self-confidence, and destroy hope, but add to it the burden of debt, and all who are victims of these two cruel taskmasters are practically doomed to failure. He goes on, none can do their best work, or express themselves in terms that command respect, or can either create or carry out a definite purpose in life with heavy debt hanging over their head. Those bound in the slavery of debt are just as helpless as the slave who is bound by ignorance or by actual chains. And Hill doesn't leave us hanging, though. This is a book about success. He says, to whip the fear of poverty, one must take two very definite steps, providing one is in debt. First, quit the habit of buying on credit, and follow this by gradually paying off the debts that you have already incurred. Thomas Jefferson said something similar. He said, never spend your money before you've earned it. Being free of the worry of debt means that you are ready to revamp the habits of your mind and redirect your course towards prosperity. Adopt as part of your definite chief aim the habit of saving a regular proportion of your income, even if this is to be no more than a penny a day. Very soon, this habit will begin to lay hold of your mind, and you will actually get joy out of saving. And I'd want to add to that too, that there's a definite difference between being a skinflint and being frugal. Don't let pride interfere with your financial situation. You can still be generous and kind, but be frugal also. Now, I can't relay all of the advice that he gives in this chapter to you, but here are a few more nuggets of gold from this chapter which might be of interest. Reserve funds are essential in the successful operation of business, he says. As a freelancer, I can't agree more with that. I'm currently owed literally thousands of pounds from work completed, and without a reserve fund, I'd be fucked. Next, he says that savings accounts are essential to success on the part of individuals. But from my point of view, it can't be denied that the rates we're getting offered by banks at the moment are utter garbage. I got a letter from a bank a few years ago explaining that I'd get 0.01 interest on one account of mine, and I thought it was a misprint, so I went in, queued for 15 minutes, and was told that it was actually true, it wasn't a misprint. But even knowing that, though, I have recently started a savings plan which automatically takes £50 off of me a week, and it goes from my account where I get my money in into this savings account. And I don't need to have a habit of saving, as that's literally taken via a standing order from one account into the other. And it also happens before I get my grubby little paws on it. When I need it, though, it will be there. And the final snippet which I'll offer up from this chapter is this. He says the nickels, dimes and pennies which the average person allows to slip through their fingers would, if systematically saved and properly put to work, eventually bring financial independence. And my mum used to say this, count the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves. These days the pennies are not just falling out of our pockets, though they are forgotten payment plans and automated payments to gyms we never attend. Get saving the pennies by looking at where your money is actually going, would be my advice. And so now, if you're trying to develop a habit of saving, then you must learn to kill the habit of unnecessary spending, which he mentioned earlier. And as I said before, you don't have to be a skinflint to do this. You just need to learn to control your spending and to be somewhat frugal. And frugal just means being careful with your money or your food or your other resources. Hill's book gives multiple examples of former millionaires who now have nothing to their name, as they were either born into money and didn't value it, or as they couldn't control their spending habits, they lost it. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be. Rosalind Carter, unquote. Lesson 5. Initiative and Leadership. Elbert Hubbard said the world bestows its big prizes both in money and honours for one thing, and that is initiative. And it's essential that I highlight that initiative is the vital quality here, as when researching this episode I noted that many seem to refer to this as the leadership lesson. Initiative is associated with leadership for the reason that Hill believes leadership is essential for the attainment of success, but he also says that initiative is the very foundation upon which this necessary quality, leadership, is built. So what is initiative? It's doing the right thing without being told. And one of the peculiarities of leadership is the fact that it is never found in those who have not acquired the habit of taking the initiative, and referring back to lesson 3, it also does not flourish in those who do not have self-confidence. If you're to become a person of initiative and leadership, Hill says that you must first master the habit of procrastination and eliminate it from your makeup. How many of our problems today come from procrastination, I wonder? It's one of those ninja-like enemies of productivity that I often harp on about here, and I've offered up solutions to it in the past. Hill, too, has a formula for throwing this off, which goes right back to the definite chief aim. He says you must form the habit of taking some definite action each day that will carry you one step nearer the attainment of your definite chief aim by having the initiative to do 3 things. A. Do one definite thing each day that ought to be done without anyone telling you to do it. B. Look around you to find at least one thing that you can do each day that you've not been in the habit of doing, but that will be of value to others without expectation of pay. And C. Tell at least one person each day of the value of practicing this habit of doing something that ought to be done without being told to do it. It's an interesting one because it's kind of a technical exercise, but remember, this is his formula for throwing off procrastination and keeping you focused on your definite chief aim. So that the purpose of this is to kill procrastination. If you've tried everything else, it might be worth a go. So the habit of initiative becomes fixed in proportion to the extent that it is practiced. Hill writes these formulas, incidentally, in the format of a contract with ourselves. He doesn't want us to keep these agreements in our heads. He wants a physical signed contract which we will adhere to. And it's an interesting act, as it kind of seals the deal and makes us consider, for a time at least, the advice that he gives us on things like this. And the second thing that Hill advises if you are to become a person of initiative and leadership is to understand that the only way to get happiness is by giving it away to others. And I can speak for this. Through this podcast, I gain a level of happiness myself by driving myself and giving up really vast, too much time possibly, but vast amounts of my time to creating and marketing these shows in the hope simply that they will help other people. This gives me not a financial return, but one of great satisfaction. What's interesting here is that Hill believes that you cannot talk initiative to others without developing a desire to practice it yourself through the operation of the principle of auto-suggestion, which he talks about a lot. I've mentioned it before. Every statement that you make to others leaves its imprint on your own subconscious mind. That's what he's playing with here with this formula. So talk about initiative to others, and the same could be true of anything on this show that hits the mark with you. The more you talk about it, the more these positive and productive ideas take root in your own psyche. And it's here that Hill turns to the subject of leadership, which he says has two very distinct brands. One of them is deadly and destructive, and the other one is helpful and constructive. The deadly brand, which leads not to success but to absolute failure, is the brand adopted by pseudo-leaders who force their leadership on unwilling followers. And I've met a few of those bullish charlatans in my time, I'll tell you. The challenge of leadership is to be strong, but not rude. Be kind, but not weak. Be bold, but not a bully. Be thoughtful, but not lazy. Be humble, but not timid. Be proud, but not arrogant. Have humour, but without folly. Jim Rohn, unquote. Hill acknowledges too the penalties of leadership, and that leaders are not always spoken of sweetly, but he says that this should not deter you from becoming a leader. It's only genius, he says, that attracts the attention of critics. Nobody bothers slandering a person who isn't somewhere near the upper rungs of the ladder of success. And I love this point, as we see it every day in the media and in politics. It's like this was written last week. This chapter is overflowing with wisdom. It's full of real-life examples and truths that even now are like a free buffet to a productivity fiend. Even if you don't think yourself a leader, or perhaps particularly if you don't, then you have to give this chapter real consideration. For Hill, the qualities of a great leader include moral ascendancy, paternalism, fairness, initiative, decision, dignity, and courage. And he explains that you must give all the time, as self-sacrifice is essential to leadership. He talks about punishment as well here, and the essential fairness in also giving credit. And finally, he talks about intolerance. If you must give expression to prejudice and hatred and intolerance, do not speak it, but write it, he says. Write it in the sand near the water's edge. I'll end it here, but to recap, today we've covered Lesson 3, self-confidence. Believe that you are worthy of success and that you can attain it. Without truly understanding this, you will probably get nowhere with most of your goals. If you're not confident, then you cannot sell yourself in life. Lesson 4 was the habit of saving. Saving money is solely a matter of habit. Take his advice and make it happen. And Lesson 5 was initiative and leadership. Leadership is essential for the attainment of success, but initiative is the very foundation upon which this necessary quality is built. I'm cautious today about giving you a call to action in all this, as we are covering some very large topics here. But if you can find a moment to simply discuss the topic of initiative, as Hill suggests, then that will be enough. Through the power of autosuggestion, this will start to instill action and initiative in your life to perhaps revisit this episode and put more of the advice here to good use. These lessons are not intended as a shortcut to success or as a mechanical formula that you can use without any effort. The real value lies in the use that you'll make of them, and not in the lessons themselves. The chief purpose of all of this, and in Napoleon Hill's book in the first place, is to help you to develop in yourself the qualities covered in the law of success. And I'm going to end today's show with the words of Mark Twain. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones that you did. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from safe harbour, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Now take control of your own destiny. Keep on shooting, and join me next time on Film Pro Productivity. The music that you can hear right now is Adventures by Ehimitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website at filmproproductivity.com. And you can follow my personal accounts on Twitter and Instagram at fight_director, or follow the show itself on the official Twitter account at FilmProProdPod, or on Facebook. Why not interact a bit on Facebook at FilmPro Productivity? And continue to support the show by subscribing, spreading the word, and leaving an awesome review.